Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
The last embers of the day were bleeding across the sky in hues of orange and violet. My face felt slightly tired. A familiar mask worn after an afternoon that had nothing to do with my marketing job, but my heart was calm. Serena, even. I parked the Lexus in my usual spot, the motion as automatic as breathing. I glanced toward the other side of the garage. The empty space there pricked me with a small, fleeting sense of unease. Arthur's car wasn't there. I took a slow, deliberate breath. The scent of leather and my expensive perfume filling my lungs. He had probably gone out to dinner with the kids. It was something he often did, especially on the nights when I manufactured excuses to be absent, citing late-night client meetings or team-building events that never existed. I pulled the keys from the ignition and gathered my handbag without rushing, feeling secure in the finely woven tapestry of my own lies. Deep down, in a place I rarely examined, I believed I had absolute control over everything. I was certain that Arthur would never suspect. Not about the secret meetings, the stolen afternoons, the clandestine calls with Julian Vance. A man who captivated me in a way I thought was impossible to resist. Arthur was predictable, stable, a good man, a wonderful father, but a man whose world was painted in shades of gray, while Julian offered a vibrant, dangerous spectrum of color. Upon entering the house, I dropped my things onto the plush living room couch. The house was quiet, but it was the usual kind of quiet, the kind that settled in before the storm of evening routines. Homework, dinner, bedtime stories. I walked to the kitchen, the cool marble under my feet feeling solid, permanent. I opened the gleaming stainless steel fridge and poured myself a glass of chilled water, still blissfully unaware of the chasm that was about to open beneath me. I finished the last sip with a faint smile, satisfied with what I considered a perfectly balanced life, a stable, respectable marriage, and a forbidden, exhilarating romance. I went upstairs, the soft carpet silencing my footsteps. I changed into my silk sleepwear, the fabric a soft caress against my skin, and lay down, with the profound tranquility of someone who believes everything is unfolding exactly as planned. My mind was light, already drifting, dreaming about the next day, already crafting a new excuse, a new reason to slip away and fall back into Julian's arms. To me, Arthur had always been an open book, a man too willing to overlook things, too focused on his work, on the kids' soccer schedules and piano lessons. I saw him as a man too complacent, too trusting, to ever notice anything out of place. He was the foundation of the house, strong and reliable, but I was the one who decorated the rooms, who lived within the walls, and who kept a secret key to a hidden door. I believed he would never, ever, think to check the locks. As I drifted off to sleep, that certainty was the last thought that echoed in my mind. It was a comfortable, dangerous, and utterly foolish thought. When I woke up, the impact was not gradual. It was immediate, a physical shock that jolted me from the depths of a pleasant dream. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It was different now, not the peaceful quiet of the early morning, but a dense, absolute emptiness. I was used to hearing the kids' voices by now, the sound of Leo's animated chatter, the soft hum of Chloe's singing. I was used to the rich aroma of coffee brewing, the gentle clinking of silverware from the kitchen downstairs. I sat up in bed, my heart beginning a low, anxious thrum. I strained my ears, but there was nothing. The emptiness was a weight, pressing in on me. "Leo, Chloe," I called out, my voice thick with sleep, but the words were swallowed by the void. No reply. A spike of real fear, sharp and cold, pierced through my morning grogginess. I quickly threw on a robe and hurried downstairs. I expected to find them in the living room, but the television was off. The room was still and lifeless. I went to the garage, my hands trembling slightly. Arthur's car was still gone. The discomfort from the night before began to blossom into a suffocating vine, tightening its grip around my chest. I returned to the living room, my heartbeat now frantic, a frantic bird, trapped in my ribs. It was then that I saw it, an envelope, placed perfectly in the center of the mahogany side table. My name, Evelyn, was written on it in Arthur's firm, unmistakable hand. My hands shook even before I touched it. I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of something final, something irreversible, inside. I tore it open hurriedly. As I slid the single folded note out, my entire body froze. The first word struck me like a physical blow. I know everything. He knew. Each line that followed was written with a cutting, detached calmness that seemed to pierce through the little pride I had left. He described, with methodical precision, how he had discovered it all. He revealed that for months, he had silently followed every step I took, observing every lie I told, every excuse I crafted. He detailed how I had neglected our own children, forgetting Chloe's birthday party, missing Leo's championship soccer game, skipping Thanksgiving dinner, all for my clandestine meetings with Julian. The note didn't ask for explanations. It didn't offer any space for apologies. It was a sentence, already carried out. Arthur informed me, in clear, concise terms, that he had left the house with the kids. He had taken them to his sister Helen's house, hours away. But that wasn't all. As I unfolded the note further, another, thicker sheaf of papers slipped out. A folder. My blood ran cold as I opened it. Inside was the evidence: photographs, videos, bank records, transcripts of my conversations with Julian, printed and cataloged. The words I had typed in secret, mocking Arthur's naivety, ridiculing our marriage, making plans for a future with another man. They were all there, laid bare on the page. Every sentence, every image, was a cruel reminder that I, out of sheer, blinding arrogance, believed I would never be caught. Arthur ended the note with a cold, final warning. Nothing I said or did would change what had already been done. The final words seemed to echo through the empty room, as if the house itself, our home, was rejecting my presence there. For the first time in my entire life, I felt the ground disappear from beneath my feet. I stood there, motionless, the paper in my hands. Arthur had taken the kids, the car, and even the sense of security I had always believed was mine to command. And more than anything, he had taken away my right to choose. My breathing became shallow, my face burning with a shame so profound it felt like a physical fire. The woman who, just hours earlier, believed she was in control of everything, now found herself utterly, devastatingly, alone. The note still in my hands seemed heavier than anything I had ever carried. What had once been a thrilling routine of lies had transformed, in an instant, into a nightmare. I remained motionless, my eyes fixed on the evidence Arthur had left behind. The paper seemed to burn my fingertips. I tried to reread what was written, but the words seemed to jumble, my mind refusing to accept the brutal reality. A wave of pure panic overwhelmed me, making it difficult to draw a clear breath. I began to move through the house in an automatic, zombie-like motion, opening doors, looking into every corner, as if I might find an escape. But everything was empty, not just the house, but the life I believed I had under my control. I tried calling Arthur, blocked. I tried the kids' cell phones, the calls wouldn't even ring. Each failed attempt sank me deeper into a formless, echoing despair. My mind replayed every recent moment, every word spoken, every excuse, and the truth imposed itself mercilessly. I had ignored the signs. I had underestimated Arthur's intelligence. While I believed he remained blind, he had been one step ahead, planning every single detail. He hadn't lost control. He had simply waited for the perfect moment to act, and that moment had arrived with brutal, unforgiving precision. The following days dragged on in a blur of shock and dread. The official start of the legal process was swift and merciless. With each new certified letter, with each email from his lawyer, I felt the weight of my failure intensify. The custody of the children was the first and most devastating legal blow. The hearing was a humiliating ordeal. The arguments were too solid to contest. The messages made it clear how neglectful I had been. The trips I had taken, which coincided with family and school events, were all laid out on a calendar, proving my profound disinterest in my own family. The judge was direct, his voice devoid of sympathy. He made it clear that the children were safer and better off with their father. I could barely process what was happening. The news spread quickly. Those who once smiled at me now avoided my gaze. I, Evelyn, who always liked to project an image of confidence, now found myself surrounded by looks of judgment and disdain. Every face I passed on the street seemed to carry a silent sentence. The house became a prison. Its silence was no longer peaceful. It was accusatory. Without Arthur's income and burdened with debts, I had to make a bitter, humiliating decision. I put the house up for sale, the last tangible memory of a comfortable, respectable life. The sale was quick. I had to accept an offer far below market value, just to settle the debts. The money was just enough to pay what I owed, and secure a small, temporary apartment. I was adrift, stripped of my children, my home, and my dignity. And while I tried to gather the strength to figure out what could be saved, the news that destroyed what little stability I had left arrived. Julian, the man for whom I had risked everything, Arthur, in his meticulous campaign, had taken an additional step. He had filed a lawsuit against Julian Vance for alienation of affection. The evidence that Julian knew I was married was abundant. There were messages where he had said he didn't care that I had a husband and kids, that his only interest was the satisfaction our affair provided. I tried calling him, desperate for some kind of alliance. The calls went straight to voicemail. Days turned into a week. Finally, I received a short, cold text. He had accepted a legal settlement. The amount was high, a significant compensation he paid to Arthur to avoid a bigger, more public scandal. Julian gave in, paid the money, and quickly ended the case. He simply resolved the issue and vanished. The betrayal, from the man I believed was part of a strong and unshakable romance, now revealed its cruelest face. He had turned his back at the most critical moment. He was willing to abandon me completely, to protect himself. After weeks of silence, I finally located him. He appeared at my new, small apartment. I poured out everything: the pain, the humiliation, the losses, the suffocating emptiness. He listened in silence, with that calculating look. When I finished, his response was not one of comfort. He simply suggested we stick together, pool our resources, and try to start over. Far from judging eyes, desperate, and with no other way out, I agreed. We moved in together into that cramped apartment. The luxury, the expensive clothes, the fine dining, all gone. What remained was a modest home sustained by dwindling savings and empty promises. I tried to convince myself that this could work, but the illusion faded quickly. Julian remained exactly the same man he had always been: cold, calculating, and fundamentally incapable of staying faithful. He soon became involved with another married woman, repeating the same destructive cycle. And the worst part, he didn't even bother to hide it. Hushed phone calls, messages in the middle of the night, constant disappearances. All of it happened right in front of my eyes. A cruel, daily reminder that I had traded a stable home for an even deeper, more chaotic abyss. I had been just another game to him, a disposable piece. But the conclusion of this new story was not subtle. The husband of the woman Julian was now involved with, found out everything. And what happened next shocked even those accustomed to scandals. The confrontation was violent, intense. One night, the man stormed into our apartment, his eyes consumed by fury. I froze, unable to even scream. Julian, on the other hand, descended into complete and utter panic. Faced with the man's threats, he lost all his arrogant composure. The scene was humiliating. Overcome with fear, he began pleading for forgiveness desperately, his terror so absolute that he ended up urinating on himself. Trembling and unable to articulate words, seeing his deplorable state, the man decided to exact his revenge in a different way. He grabbed his phone and started recording everything. He captured every second. The video hit the internet just a few hours later, spreading with incredible speed. Julian became the subject of jokes and public ridicule, memes, edits, offensive nicknames. And I, though not the main focus, was dragged into the center of the scandal along with him, watching my own life shatter completely as my name became irrevocably associated with shame, decline, and destruction. While I sank into the mire of public scandal, Arthur moved in an entirely different direction. He and the children had remained at his sister Helen's house. He had focused on rebuilding. Each morning was dedicated to the children. Each night was dedicated to resolving the pending issues of the divorce, methodically closing old doors so that new ones could open. He didn't waste time dwelling on the past. For Arthur, there was only one mission: to protect his children and ensure they had a dignified future, far from all the chaos. The divorce was finalized, definitively. A few days later, as if fate had been waiting, he received a job offer from an international architecture firm based in Australia. A position of great responsibility, a chance to lead a major project. He analyzed the offer carefully, With sole custody approved, he had the full right to move to another country with the kids. Without needing any additional authorization from me, he organized everything: passports, visas, school enrollments, and plane tickets. Once everything was ready, he boarded a flight with Leo and Chloe for Australia, taking with him only what truly mattered, ready to start over, in a place where the past couldn't reach them. In Australia, the first few months required adaptation, but Arthur was used to challenges. He devoted himself to his work, but he never let the routine pull him away from the children. He took care of their meals, helped with their school assignments, made sure to create moments of fun, and in this process of rebuilding, life treated him to a surprise. On an ordinary afternoon, during a school event, he met Clara, a woman who worked as a volunteer in the reading project for children. She had a light, easy demeanor, arare paciense, and a smile that, little by little, began to break down the barriers Arthur had built around his heart. Their meetings began with simple conversations, but over time, these conversations grew deeper. Clara understood what Arthur carried with him. She didn't demand explanations. She simply listened. The children, Leo and Chloe, naturally formed bonds with her. Their connection grew steadily, organically, as if destiny itself was carefully stitching each moment together. Arthur, who believed he might never trust anyone again, realized that Clara wasn't there to replace anyone, but to build something entirely new. When he decided, months later, to ask her to marry him, her answer was a serene, heartfelt yes. The wedding was simple, surrounded only by the children and a few close friends. It was a fresh start, clean and honest, where each of them carried scars, but also a genuine desire to build a solid, loving home. As time passed, their house filled with joy. The children began to see Clara as a true mother, someone who was present in all the small battles of daily life. She cared for them as if they were her own. And Arthur, watching all of this, finally felt at peace. There were no traces of the old life left. There, in that new land, was a home built on respect, trust, and a genuine love, something he had once thought he would never experience again. 5 years passed, 5 years in which their life continued peacefully. The children were growing up happy and well-adjusted. Arthur and Clara built solid memories, far from the echoes of scandals and bitterness. But the past, no matter how distant, sometimes finds a way to cross our paths. During a vacation trip back to the United States, Arthur decided to take the family to visit a few relatives. It was a trip planned to be light and joyful. While strolling through a bustling mall, the unexpected happened. I appeared before them. I was walking alone, with a lost look in my eyes. I looked visibly different. The lines on my face were etched by time and the immense weight of everything I had endured. My clothes, once impeccable and designer, were now common, discreet, as though I were trying my best to disappear into the crowd. My eyes met Arthur's, and in that split second, the world seemed to stop. I froze, paralyzed by the sight before me. There stood Arthur, and beside him, a warm, smiling woman, Clara, and holding their hands were the children, my children. They were united, smiling, radiating a lightness that seemed utterly unattainable to someone like me. The kids, now older, noticed who was in front of them. Their smiles faded, replaced by a look of wary recognition, but they showed no hesitation. In a single, fluid motion, both Leo and Chloe walked over to Clara and hugged her warmly, pressing themselves against her sides. It was an unconscious, protective gesture, but in that movement, they made it clearer than any words ever could who their real mother was. I remained frozen, hot tears streaming down my face. A strangled sound escaped my throat. I tried to take a step forward, mumbling some disjointed words, a desperate, half-formed plea to reclaim something, anything. But all I encountered was an implacable, unbreakable silence. The children stayed by Clara's side, their small hands gripping hers tightly, and Arthur, with a firm, steady gaze, positioned himself between them and me, maintaining the quiet dignity that had always guided him. He didn't insult me. He didn't yell. He didn't need harsh words. A simple look was enough to end any attempt at closeness. It was a look that wasn't filled with hatred, but with something far more devastating, finality. With a serenity that cut me deeper than any anger could have, he took Clara's hand and gently led the children away. I was left alone, standing behind, watching that family, his family, disappear into the crowd, acutely aware that I would never be a part of that story again. Everything I had once discarded so easily, so arrogantly, was now right there before my eyes. A perfect, happy picture, but it was completely and irrevocably out of my reach. As Arthur and his new family moved forward, they left the past behind them. Walking through the mall, Arthur squeezed Clara's hand. He glanced down at Leo and Chloe, who were already chattering excitedly about the toy store up ahead. He felt no triumph, no lingering anger, only a profound sense of peace. He had shielded them. He had saved them. The ghost from their past had appeared, and they had instinctively turned toward the light, toward the future he had so carefully built for them. He knew, in that moment, that they were going to be all right. Their home was not a place, but a feeling of safety and love that they carried with them, and it was unbreakable. Meanwhile, I stayed there, motionless, long after they had vanished from sight. My eyes remained glued to the spot where they had stood. My body shook with a deep, uncontrollable tremor. My head seemed to spin, while my heart beat in a chaotic, erratic rhythm. The sensation was one of sinking, as if all the air in the vast, noisy mall had vanished, leaving me in a vacuum. The images of them, of the children hugging Clara, of Arthur's unwavering gaze, formed an impossible wall to climb. The cheerful music, the chatter of shoppers, the laughter of other children, all of it faded into a dull, distant roar. All I could hear was the frantic pounding in my ears, and the echo of my own foolish certainty. From a lifetime ago, the world I had so carelessly gambled away had moved on, healed, and blossomed without me. It had not only survived my absence, it had thrived. I was not a missing piece. I was a discarded one. I finally turned and walked away, a solitary figure, in a sea of strangers. The mall, which had been a place of life and connection just moments before, now felt like a mausoleum for the life I had destroyed. There were no more tears to cry. There was only the hollow ache of absolute loss. I was left alone, with the echoes of my own arrogance, and the deafening silence of a future I had authored myself. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this silence would be my only companion for all the days to come.